Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. I really enjoyed tonight listening to Reverend Ken MacDonald speak about his perspective on Israel and Gaza and this challenge that I think lots of us have in that we're horrified by what happened on October the 7th. But at the same time, we're disgusted by the death, by the starvation, by what's happening in Gaza at the same time, and that it's difficult to have both truths exist at the same time, but they do exist at the same time, and uh, and I think he put it into a really good perspective, historical perspective, and a emotional perspective, and a religious perspective, and I thought it was helpful, and so I hope you felt it helpful. And then I thought Jim Bright's personal description of how he's trying to make a small difference by opening a hospital in the Democratic Republic of Congo was pretty inspiring. Both of them talked really about the challenges of life and our current situation, um, and then the rebirth, the opportunities that exist, which I think is what Good Friday and Easter Monday or Easter Sunday are all about. And whether you're Christian or religious, or you just are excited about the coming of spring. And frankly, I'm really excited about this total eclipse of the sun. And I've got an interview coming with an astrophysicist that I think is really exciting, where he says when the total eclipse of the sun occurs, and then when the sun comes back, people go crazy cheering. Wildlife comes out, because the total eclipse of the sun scares the bejesus out of people as they think that something catastrophic is about to occur, or is occurring. And then when the sun comes back a couple of minutes later, it is this profound sense of relief and rebirth and resurgence. And so I think that is what Easter Sunday is all about. And so I wanted to end tonight's show by talking about some of the things that I'm worried about on on a sad day. Um, and every Good Friday, at least most Good Fridays, when it's reasonable weather, I go down to College Street and I watch the Easter parade, and it is a very soulful, sad, introspective parade, unlike any other parade you're ever going to go to, because there's no bands, there's no cheering. Actually, there is bands, but they're playing religious music. But it's got the Stations of the Cross depicted in the parade going by you, and you sit and you watch. I usually have a cappuccino from a nice Italian cafe, and you think about the negativity in life that sometimes exists, the challenges that we have and that you've had, and obviously the suffering of Jesus, and yet again, there's something about Easter Sunday and the resurrection, the rebirth. I used to, when I was a teenager, always go to a sunrise service because it was really quite special to see the sun come up, and invariably, hopefully, it was a sunny day. It was a spring day. The tulips were coming out, um, and it was warming on your skin. Ukraine and the Russian invasion of Ukraine and what's happening in Ukraine is an incredible issue, and I really do think that this is potentially the start of a World War III. I hate to admit, and I've talked about that on my show. And if it's not that, it's at least a repeat of what happened in in the in the World War II, or the first steps to World War II with the invasion of Austria, Czechoslovakia, and then Poland, etc. And I hope to gosh that the Western world wakes up, funds Ukraine to the extent that it needs to, such that Russia doesn't get the the opening effectively to go further. Gaza and what is happening there with starvation and destruction and death is horrific. What Hamas did on October the 7th is probably the worst example of, and you can't even call it humanity because it was the opposite of humanity, the worst example of barbarism since the Holocaust. Interest rates are high, and we complain about it. Affordability aside, neither of those, affordability is an issue. None of those, they pale, even though we think about them a lot, they pale in significance to what is going on in the Ukraine and in Gaza. That said, interest rates, housing affordability, which I think really is the issue of our current time. Climate change is a massive issue, and I think may be the issue for our generation. But I think that housing affordability. I was at this week a in Urban Land Institute dinner, and they were saying one of the biggest crimes of our current society is that our kids aren't going to be able to afford a reasonable home anywhere close to where we live in the Greater Toronto Area. They're going to have to either downsize to a very small shoebox type apartment, condo, or they're going to have to live, half an hour farther out, if not an hour farther out from the city. Housing affordability is an issue that governments are just starting to address. The debt and deficits that governments have just this week declared and are probably coming in the next couple of weeks federally are astronomical. And I think that is a problem, a massive, huge problem about to come, particularly as we take a look at all the statistics in regards to declining productivity, prosperity that used to be equal to the Americans, that is now 30, 40% less than the Americans, et cetera. Every day when I look at CNN and I see what's going on south of the border in the US election and the polarization that's taking place there, and worry that some of that might come to Canada, I shudder. I did my master's in the United States. I thought that the US was the shining city on the hill that Ronald Reagan talked about. And it looks to me like it's become authoritarian, election denying, believing, lies, and slipping into a non-democratic state. And I scared to death of that. And then I think, and it really came home to roost to me during the Brian Mulroney funeral last week, where Jean Charest, in his very eloquent eulogy, talked about how Brian Mulroney did what was at the time the most unpopular tax policy, the GST, that became the most popular policy for all of his successors. The GST was the right thing to do, and it saved our country from a fiscal incredible challenge. Just like 10 years later, when Martin and Gretchen dramatically reduced spending and right-sized our federal deficit and thereby the debt. Tough measures took political courage and people that were willing to use the political capital for positive change. This current crazy opposition to the carbon tax, which I am convinced, and I think every economist is convinced, and every environmentalist is convinced, is the best way to fight climate change and greenhouse gas, has become this easy target because it's not well explained. That yes, we pay a tax on carbon, but we get a rebate back. That for the vast majority of people, probably 80% of the people, other than people that use a ton of carbon and or are very high income, is going to be equal to, if not greater than, the tax they pay. So it's going to be a disincentive to use carbon or products that have a high carbon input, and an incentive for us all to be a little bit smarter. But it should be, for the vast majority of us, revenue neutral. We should get a rebate equal to or greater than the tax we pay. And for some reason, we haven't been able to explain it. We haven't been able to persuade people. We pay sin taxes on alcohol. We pay sin taxes on cigarettes. For some reason, we just haven't been able to explain this. And too many people are the opposite of Brian Mulroney, aren't willing to do the things that are right long-term, and are only willing to do the things that are currently popular. And I think that's a huge mistake. So those are a bunch of the things that on this Good Friday, I look at as sort of the storm clouds, the problems, the issues that we've got to face. From a societal standpoint, from a personal standpoint, I think a lot of us are facing breakups, divorces, deaths in the family or with loved ones, living alone without family and loved ones nearby, which is, I think, one of the ills in our society, that we don't have the social connections that we may have had in the past. People say, doctors say that if you live with a sickness, but you've got people around you, chances are you'll survive. But if you live with a sickness and you're alone, chances are you won't. Taxes are coming up, which has always been one of the real negatives of this time of year. And we all have to face, number one, going through the process of filing them. And then number two, the realization of how much money we actually spend. And then, ongoing litigation, trials and tribulations are a problem that a lot of people face, and I'm facing. So with all those societal issues and personal issues, how are we supposed to feel? I think we have to contemplate them. People have talked about writing them down. People have talked about somehow understanding what they are, accepting what they are. But then there is this promise of rebirth, of resurrection, of renewal, of spring is coming, of the sun coming back after an eclipse. And I think that was what my mom was talking about when she said, we are an Easter people. The days are getting longer. The sun is coming out. The flowers are coming back. The buds are coming on the trees. Rebirth, hope. We're fired up. We're ready to go. And so on this Good Friday, I hope you all give a little time to think about the struggles, the challenges, the problems that we have, that society has, that Jesus had. But then also think about Sunday and rebirth, starting afresh. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to sit back and I'm going to think about what I'm looking forward to and how I'm personally going to change my own little part of the world. Thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it. Have a good long weekend. And I remind you, I'm on every Monday through Friday at 6 o'clock on 960 AM. You can stream me online at www.saga960am.ca. All my podcasts and videos are on my website, briancrombie.com. Thanks. Good night.